Same exact move. One car slides into a gap in traffic, forces the driver behind to brake hard, and speeds off. If the driver is you, the story writes itself. You're late, you took the gap that appeared, you would have been fine if the other car had not been glued to the bumper. If the driver is someone else, the story writes a different line. They're a jerk. They don't respect anyone. They think they own the road. Two verdicts for one act, and the verdict depends entirely on whose body was in the car. Everyone thinks they understand this. You know your own excuses and you do not know theirs. But the real mechanism runs deeper than missing information. Once you see it, you will stop trusting your own moral judgments in traffic, in arguments, and at the dinner table. Take the common explanations seriously first. There is a genuine information gap. When you act, you carry your full history with you. The meeting that ran long, the text from your partner, the headache that started at 2. When someone else acts, you only get the final 2 seconds, the one gesture that hits you in the face. So it seems rational, even fair, to fill the gap with personality. You assume their behavior is the whole story because that is the only chapter you have. This is how the word entitled gets thrown at a stranger who takes the last parking spot. You do not know their situation, so your brain invents one from their character. It feels like a fair inference. What could be more reasonable than judging someone on what you can see? Here is the flip. The information story predicts that if you were handed the same context for another person, you would judge them the same way you judge yourself. You will not. Put the same behavior in front of someone, give them the same facts, and they still reach for character when they are spectators and circumstances when they are actors. This is the actor-observer asymmetry, a close cousin of the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error is the general habit of overrating character and underrating situation when explaining other people. The actor-observer asymmetry adds the twist. The same person makes the opposite error about themselves, not because they are lying to protect their ego, though ego helps, because the two judgments come from two different visual fields. Look at what your eyes actually do. When you perform an action, your attention points outward, away from your body. You see the road, the clock, the curb, the cyclist, the glass on the sidewalk. You do not see your own face, your own posture, or the pattern of your own decisions. Your situation is the visible world. Your character is invisible to you at the moment of action. Now watch another person. Your eyes rest on their body. They are the moving figure in the foreground, the center of the frame. Their situation is the blur behind them, if you register it at all. So the raw material you use to explain a behavior is literally different. For yourself, you have a wide shot of the environment and a blind spot where your body should be. For them, you have a close-up on the person and a shallow depth of field that turns the environment into noise. Why would the brain need selfishness to produce two different verdicts? It just needs to be attached to one of the two bodies. That is why this idea has been around for half a century. In the early 1970s, psychologists Edward Jones and Keith Nisbet proposed what became known as the actor-observer asymmetry. They pointed out that when people explain their own choices, they mention deadlines, pressures, and temptations. When they explain the same kind of choice in someone else, they mention personality, ambition, and weakness. The classic examples are simple. Ask students why they chose their major, and they talk about interesting classes and a professor who inspired them. Ask a student why another student chose a major, and they talk about what kind of person that student is. Same behavior, same university, same available facts. The perspective shifts the grammar of the explanation, from verbs tied to the world to adjectives tied to the self. The second line of evidence makes the visual story harder to ignore. If the asymmetry came from hidden information, then showing people their own actions from the outside should not change their explanations. But it does. Put a person in front of a mirror or show them a video of themselves, and their self-explanations start to sound like their explanations of strangers. They suddenly describe their own character, their own mannerisms, their own flaws. The outside view creates an observer inside your own head. This is why recordings of arguments have so much power. You watch yourself losing your temper on a screen and you say, "I look like a bully." You felt justified in the moment because you were looking through your own eyes. The camera gave you the other person's perspective on your body, and with it, a stranger's verdict. How could a mirror change your explanation of your own past? Because perspective is not decoration. Perspective is the evidence. More evidence comes from experiments that manipulate perspective directly. When people watch a behavior from the actor's point of view, the actor's situation is more visible, so explanations lean toward circumstance. When people watch the same behavior from a third-person point of view, the actor's face and actions fill the frame, so explanations lean toward character. The physical angle of the camera changes the moral angle of the judgment. The same person can be a victim, a villain, or a hero depending on where you place the lens. That should be unsettling. It means your sense of fairness is not a stable moral compass. It is a viewfinder. And most of the time you have no idea which lens you are using. You just feel the verdict, and the verdict feels like truth. If a camera angle can reframe a crime, what can it do to a forgotten text message? But the asymmetry is not a law, and the exceptions tell you something useful. When people are depressed, they often reverse the pattern and blame their own character for everything, even when circumstances are clearly at fault. When you love someone, you are more likely to take their perspective and explain a hurtful action with their bad day instead of their bad soul. When you are arguing with a stranger, the gap widens. So the bias is a default setting, not a fixed one. Healthy brains use it. Depressed brains overcorrect. Close relationships can override it. Meta-analyses of the effect suggest it is real but not as enormous as some textbooks imply. That is the honest version. It weakens when you force yourself to share a point of view, and it collapses when you are forced to explain your own failure in front of a mirror. But in the ordinary flow of a day, you run on default, and the default is in your favor. Language keeps the cycle running. When you describe your own behavior, you use verbs that point outward. I got stopped at every light, I was stuck on hold, I was pushed for time. When you describe the same behavior in someone else, you reach for adjectives. They were careless, they were self-important, they were aggressive. A verb implies a situation that happened to the person. An adjective implies a quality that lives inside them. So every casual retelling of your day becomes a deposition in your own favor. You are not consciously painting yourself as innocent. You are just speaking from the only angle you have. But the people listening are hearing character evidence. When you tell a friend about some anonymous driver, your friend will think that person is a jerk, not that person is late. They are doing to your enemy exactly what you do to theirs. Now bring it back to that car in traffic. The reason you are late and they are a jerk is not hypocrisy. It is not even selfishness, at least not primarily. It is that you are watching two different films. Your film opens with an alarm clock, a missed exit, and a call you could not take. Their film opens with their front bumper filling your mirror and closes with their taillights vanishing. The actor-observer asymmetry insists that you will never see your own film from the inside while you are in someone else's way. You will keep reading their character, and they will keep reading yours. And both of you genuinely believe you are right. That is the deepest part of the glitch. It is not that people are biased and know it. It is that the bias is built into the geometry of how one body sees another. Every serious argument you have ever had probably followed this pattern. You explain your position with the pressures you were under. They explain your position with the kind of person you are. The disagreement is not over facts. Both narratives can fit the same facts. The disagreement is over which explanation is allowed to count as the truth. Psychologists call this the ultimate attribution error when entire groups do it. Your side's mistakes are accidents, the other side's mistakes are crimes. A person who is late for lunch is overcommitted if they are your colleague and selfish if they are your rival. Same late arrival, same lunch. The political version is everywhere. When a policy fails, your side blames circumstances, their side blames bad intentions. Neither side is lying. Both sides are watching different actors. The practical question is whether you can escape your own camera. The answer is no, not completely, but you can switch lenses on purpose. The fastest trick is to translate your favorite accusation into a sentence about circumstances. Instead of they ignored me, try they were probably holding their breath through another emergency. Instead of I am always late, try I am late when I carry too much on the way out the door. Neither sentence is guaranteed true. But the second kind invites a search for causes, and the first kind closes the file. The same works in reverse. When you are about to give yourself an excuse, ask what that sentence would sound like from a stranger's mouth. I cut them off because I was late becomes you cut them off because you think your time matters more. That shift is uncomfortable for a reason. It shows you the edge of your own viewpoint. You can also borrow someone else's eyes deliberately. This is what good negotiators do when they restate the other side's position until the other side says, yes, that is what I meant. The restatement is a camera switch. You are not agreeing with them. You are just watching their behavior from their seat with their view of the road. When you do this, the verdict softens, not because you are weak, but because the situational information becomes visible. A person is never just rude. They are rude at 9 in the morning, in a particular car, after a particular night, before a particular meeting. Every one of those details is invisible in the character verdict. You do not need to forgive them to see the details. You only need to admit that your default judgment was based on one shot of the film. The best place to test this is the next time someone cuts you off and the word jerk arrives before you have even looked at the car. Stop for a second. Ask what that driver might be seeing. Then notice that you will never know. The uncertainty is the point. If you truly believed that people are mostly products of their circumstances, then a stranger's bad behavior would rarely tell you anything about their character. It would only tell you about their situation, which you cannot see. That is a radical thought to carry through a single ordinary day. It changes how you listen to gossip, how you read a breakup text, how you vote. Not because it makes you soft, because it makes you accurate. Here is the closing picture. You are sitting at a red light. A driver waves an apology, mouth sorry, clearly flustered. Do you judge them? Probably not, because you can see the whole theater of their stress. Now imagine the same driver does the same thing, but you never see their face, only their bumper. You call them a jerk. The face is not an excuse. It is information. It shows you the situation. On the road, you almost never get the face. In real life, you get it more often, and you still ignore it. But now you know why. The lens follows your body. The day you learn to aim it at someone else, the world gets less mean and a lot more accurate. The final glitch is that even knowing all of this, you will still do it tomorrow. You will be late, someone will be in your way, and your brain will offer you a clean story. That is not a failure of character. It is the cost of being a body with eyes in the front of its head. But between the automatic verdict and the action you take, there is a tiny seam. You can learn to feel that seam, that moment when the word jerk arrives too fast and fits too easily. In that seam, you can choose which film to watch. You are not the hero of the story, and they are not the villain. You are only the camera, and cameras can turn.